Thanks for sticking around, everybody. Hello, my name is Steve Prokopy. I'm one of the programmers here. I also write for Third Coast Review. Thank you, guys. What'd you think? Pretty great, right? Yeah. Once again, welcome the director, co-writer, and co-star of Blackberry, Matt Johnson. Oh, wow. I really like this guy. Oh, wow. Thank you, Dennis.
Dennis, did you watch the movie? No.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yes, right there.
What did you think, Dennis?
I loved it.
Are you being sincere?
I am. You wouldn't lie.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's a harsh judge. He would not lie. Yeah.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I gotta admit, one of the things I've been talking about in the last hour was how unbelievably charming I found it. Maybe charming seems diminutive, so I won't, it's so, did you guys ever see this documentary Crumb? About, okay. So, oh yeah, this is one of my favorite films ever made. It has an outsized influence on my life, this movie. If you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it enough. It makes Grizzly Man look like Sesame Street. It is unbelievably edgy. It might be one of the edgiest films I've ever seen in terms of something that was released. Oh, by Criterion. Criterion released it. Anyway, our Crumb.
Here several weeks.
It did?
Yeah.
So Dennis, even you're a Crumb fan. Because what I was gonna say is this whole building and the aesthetic and the fact that you have a organist playing as you walk in and take your seats to a movie really does have a kind of our Crumb, like loving the past, like things used to be so much better, etc. And he really does have a point in that. In other ways, he's a bit sick. So I can't agree with everything that he does. But in that way, I think that you guys are so lucky to have this place, is all I'm gonna say. I wish we had this in Toronto. You really, yeah, well I'm sure you do have, I was gonna say you have no idea, but clearly you do. I wish I could come to a place like this every week because it would just fill me up. Like it would be the kind of place where I would come, even to watch trash. I can see, like we were counter-programmed with Beau is Afraid in the cinema right next door. I would even come and see that. Have you guys seen that movie? I would say here's my take on Beau is Afraid, is that it is to his career what Under the Silver Lake was to that guy who made It Follows. It was, yes. Were you cheering for It Follows? Oh. Right, like, look, again, I think it's great movies like this get made because they are a warning to other filmmakers of what happens when you alienate the people who are willing to tell you no. And so I watch that film and I go, damn, okay, I gotta make sure I keep, like, the people who know me close because I don't want to turn out like that. Maybe the wrong tone to begin this. What do you think? Are any of these people here? No, of course not.
Shot out of a cannon.
No. You know, I think people are a little too touchy about like trashing other movies because I'm not saying it's wrong to love it. Love the movie. The guy who loved both. That's great. You're probably a very unique guy with a very popular Letterboxd account. But for me, I think it's good to be able to say, not only do I not get what this movie is, and I find it incredibly boring, I find it like insane that we live in a world where something like this can even be made. And that's good because it creates, well, at the very least it creates moments like this. Anyway, I've dithered and interrupted too much.
Not at all. You mentioned Crumb, and this film has a very documentary style to it, I think.
Those were most of our influences.
I was going to ask you, what were some of those?
The biggest one was D.A. Pennebaker's stuff, specifically a movie that he made in the early 90s called The War Room.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Which if you haven't seen, it's not, I would say it's not nearly as fun as Crumb, but it's cool because you're watching them cover the Clinton campaign from the time when it didn't seem like Clinton had a chance up until the point where it's like, oh my God, he's going to be president. And the way the camera work changes from minute one to the end is so interesting because all of a sudden the stakes are crazy high, and the cameras like can't get the same access they could before. And it was something that Jared and I thought that we could mimic in this, where at the beginning it would be funny to have everything very shoulder mounted and like in the room, and like these guys don't care that there's cameras there, even though they're not that truly there, but just that aesthetic. And then by the end, when it's a $1 billion company and Doug's left, that the cameras can only shoot from like 100 meters away with super long lenses through all this glass, still in close-ups, which was really important, but so far away that it felt a lot more dispassionate and way less fun, which is the feeling that we got from watching The War Room when we watched it.
There have been a few, especially just in the last few years, a few of these sort of origin stories of tech advancements. Everything from like Tetris to, there was that show on, I think it was Showtime about Uber to...
Well, there's been tons. They made one about WeWork as well, and Theranos. In fact, we have a lot of the same cast as that Theranos
yeah, that's right.
show.
Lots of Theranos coverage. But anyway, and it all kind of, I think you could probably trace a lot of the recent stuff back to the social network. So I'm just wondering, why is it you think, because I love those movies, and I'm like, why do you think we care about those fairly recent developments in technology and how they all...
It's not something it's not something that I was thinking about. It's funny to be lumped in with those films, and to be honest, I consider it to be like a huge compliment that they would that our movie, which is like it's a very small Canadian movie compared to I think Tetris is like an $80 million film, and to even be in the same conversation with them really is a huge compliment. But I was not quite prepared to not to answer this question, but to kind of make a case for this kind of cultural examination that's going on right now. And so I've had to come up with it post hoc. And the best that I can do, I was just talking about this an hour ago, is I think that there is a thirst for trying to find answers about why we are here, where we are right now. And in the past, movies have been very good at creating a kind of mythic origin for why we are who we are. Whether they're World War II films or even Chaplin's movies, they kind of deal with a human myth that they extract, and they kind of give us the, not literal answers, but they help us to understand who we are. And I think right now there's a real craving to understand who we are. And there's not a lot of films that are giving us that answer, and these movies that are almost trying to break apart the tech that's dominating our lives are an attempt at answering that, kind of, or at least very clumsily. But I have no idea. You really, that's a question for like an anthropologist. But, right? I can say from my point of view, it wasn't something I cared about at all. I wasn't making this movie because I cared about technology. I never touched a Blackberry before we made this movie. And I didn't care about the story. What I found interesting was these three guys reminded me so much of myself. And I don't mean that like, I read about this guy, Doug, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's just like me. I meant, I read about a guy who was a perfectionist and alienated all of his friends because he felt like he was doing something important. And I read about a guy who was so power hungry and so ambitious that he was willing to do anything in order to achieve something. He believed deeply in the ends justify the means. And then there was a guy who really was only going to work because he thought it was fun. And I thought, this is exactly my life split into three people. And I think I can help to understand myself if I make this movie and treat these three guys with respect. And it had nothing to do with technology or anything to me. They could have been like home builders or painters, or the technology side of it really didn't matter. It's just a fluke that it's wound up in this catalog of other technology films.
You started out, I think there's a book where sort of your jumping off point, but I know that you did a ton of your own research and filled in a lot of the gaps that the book didn't cover. Can you talk about some of the things, why did you do that? And then also what were some of the things you were looking for? What did you find that maybe you weren't expecting in that supplemental research?
We had a book that Mike and Jim had participated in by giving interviews to. It was written by two journalists from the Globe and Mail. And so it was pretty tame in terms of how it represented them. And so we needed to figure out like what else was going on. And so the first thing I did was I talked to a lot of ex-engineers who worked there in the 90s. who, one, I kind of based my character on, with this one guy in particular, who surprisingly now has a YouTube video where he goes through our trailer and sort of says all the things that is wrong about the trailer. And he doesn't know this, but at one point he stops the trailer, okay, and it's on a frame of me. And he says, this guy's playing Doug, a guy named Douglas Freegan. He was my boss, and I gotta tell you, this guy is not really like Doug. I don't know who this guy's trying to be. And I watched this and I think there's a real divine irony to this, where I'm like, I'm literally playing you, my friend. And the fact that you're watching it being like, who are you? Yeah, I don't know if it's God or the devil who laughs in a moment like that. That's a handshake moment for God and the devil, where they're like, we did it. And I love these moments. I think so much of my work is about like trying to find something where it's like, I'm not trying to turn this into a religious conversation at all, but I love the image of God and the devil agreeing that something is good. And all my work is trying to find that, where it's like, okay, he broke the law, and he really, really like made a lot of people uncomfortable, and he did something very illegal, but it's kind of working, and the footage was good, and look how they edited it, and so they both kind of come to an agreement where it was like, this was worth it, and we both like it. I better ask the first trivia question, because otherwise these DVDs are never getting given away. Okay, the first, man, there's a great story behind me getting these DVDs. So, you know how you go in that closet and they're like, oh, pick these movies and tell us like some pretentious shit. And so, the first one I take is Spike Lee's Bamboozled. Okay, so yeah, the question will be, they all should be about Blackberry, right? Because otherwise it's not fair? That's not, I should ask trivia questions about Beau is Afraid? No. I can't open this up because then it's just gonna get crazy, and I'll make this one easy, okay. And it's just, you shout it out and we'll go by the honor system and then you get the DVD, really. This is not even that big of a prize, okay? So, and whoever shouts it out first gets it. So, what is the name of the Canadian city where this movie takes place? Who said it first? Good luck. I think it actually was you right there. Okay, hold on a second. I need to give this to you so you can give it. Can I? Yeah, okay. There you go. Okay, yeah, but we'll give it the next one later. There's a whole story here.
Your last film, Operation Avalanche, was a film I loved. I think it's very uniquely American in the conspiracy theories, in the the space race part of it. This film is, I think, uniquely Canadian. How is this story uniquely Canadian?
I think that what was motivating Jim, the real Jim, was a deep desire to beat the Americans at something, which I think you don't see it so strongly in the film, but it's one of the reasons I cast an American in that role. And Glenn and I, early on, when we were talking about this character, came to a couple of conclusions that really helped him and helped me to understand when the performance was working. The first one was, this is a guy who saw the movie Wall Street and was like, that's the coolest guy in the world. Like, did not think Gordon Gekko was in any way being played by Oliver Stone as like a bad guy, or like somebody to not be, or like an example of capitalism gone awry. Jim saw that guy and was like, of course, perfect, genius.
Instructional video.
Literally, he was like, I gotta be like that. And so the idea of a Canadian who's trying to like out-American the Americans, because he has taken like the mythic American business god seriously, and he is not seeing that in an ironic way, I think was really important for not only the company doing as well as it did, but for oddly making it a Canadian story. Because so much of my country is defined in opposition to the United States, and these guys really, really took that seriously. Like they never wanted to move their headquarters. When Karl Jankowski was trying to take them over, it was like, well, I mean, like they broke the law to stop it. And I think they were very proud, especially in the mid-2000s, about how many Americans they were able to poach and bring to this really rinky-dink small town. Like they were really proud of that they were able to get all these engineers to come up from major American companies and work there. So it's unfortunately like the one time that our country has done something that's had a international impact, which it seems funny, but there aren't really many Canadian products or Canadian stories that penetrate into world culture outside of sports. And so just by the very basis that there is a movie made about this at all, I think makes it uniquely Canadian.
How did you go about making, because this would seem like an almost impossible challenge, to make technology and technological advancement cinematic? It's so much of it is in the head or just watching guys, hunched over.
Do you want to know what the answer to that is? Is that because I didn't know how any of this shit worked, I was needing to figure it out in a way that dumb me would get it. And I figured, oh, okay, yeah, this kind of makes sense to me, and I'll present it in that way. And so that I think that's why audiences are able to follow it, because it's distilled to like the lowest common denominator of me. Being able to be like, okay, a network limit load, Or then when they're talking about splitting I wrote it all, and I can't even really break up what they were saying. They were like gonna split the packet that is going to a Blackberry between multiple phones. I don't know, what? Isn't it still the same total amount of data? It doesn't matter how many times you split it. Do you know what I mean? Like, does that really make any sense? Like if you have 1,000 data, and you're like, we'll just split it between 1,000 phones, 1 data each, no problem. It's still 1,000 data. And the problem is the load on the server. So what the fuck were those guys talking about?
But the more of that you get in there, the more authentic it seems. But you also risk like the audience drowning in that language.
Yeah, so, I wanted to keep it as minimal as possible.
I was gonna ask, which way did you kind of lean when it crunched time, like when you had a scene with a lot of that kind of language in it, potentially?
I mean, we overwrote all of them and overshot them, and then Kurt, our editor, would define what stayed in. All of those scenes are way longer in the script than they appear. That one in specific. The next film that I got. Menace to Society. This is the Hughes brothers' first film. They're quite young when they make it. And the question is, in the film Blackberry, there is a quote where Jim is at the NHL and he says, "I'm from Waterloo, where the vampires hang out." Does anybody know what that quote is from?
It's a video where somebody asks, "What's your name?"
Well, you got it, my friend. Wow. So this is a very famous Toronto, yes, you were right on time. This is a very famous Toronto video where a guy is we have a place called Yonge and Dundas Square, which is kind of like our Times Square, except very Canadian, like very rinky-dink in comparison. And a journalism student is there doing a project. She's there with her cameraman. She's like 20. And she goes to this guy and goes, "Hi, tell me your name." This is a random person. He takes the mic and goes on a 4-minute screed about the government, about how he was put in an isolation chamber, and about how he couldn't walk the streets in Waterloo because they turned him into a monster. But he goes on and on and on, and it's without breaks. It's not like he stops to think while he's talking. And yet it appears totally cogent. Like it's like street poetry, basically. And he's a regular guy. It's not like she picked some crazy person. He was like a dude going to work. And he ends by ripping his shirt off, saying, "I'm not gonna raise my voice," and then goes, "I'm gonna get myself committed to an isolation chamber. I'm going back to Waterloo, where the vampires hang out." And then he leaves. And my friends and I saw that, and we were like, there's some truth to that. And so we thought that's what Jim needed to say when he was at his absolute lowest. And he's trying to impart to Gary Bettman just how dangerous he is, you know? You don't know who I am. I'm from Waterloo where the vampires hang out, and I'm still alive, you know? It almost says that I can live amongst the undead. And so you'd better give me these Pittsburgh Penguins. That was great. You deserve that menace to society. Yeah, great work, great work. Great work, great work. We should, how long are we going to be in here? We should probably open this up to the audience at some point, don't you think?
Well, okay, so Matt's gonna hang out a little bit after the movie, talk to you guys out there or in the lounge or wherever he wants to go.
We're going to Galloping Ghouls. Do you know this place? Yeah, it's a good fight. It's the biggest arcade in the world. You guys have so much good shit here in Chicago. But do you have another question?
Let me just say, let me ask more things, see how we are on time, because we want to give away some more if you want. I never had a Blackberry or an iPhone in my life. So, wow. But this movie made me think about how different these products are. And the Blackberry was very just the essentials, basically. And actually, we're kind of coming back to that now, where we're just selling phones that call and text and email and nothing else.
Yes.
And then the iPhones, you literally, it was a way of life. It was like, and you had to kind of change your way of life to use it and to keep using it. And it's still, obviously still around. It's a culture thing. It's like, it really is. Talk about sort of capturing, because this, I mean, I don't even know how you did it, but that's what I was thinking about when this movie was over, was wow, these are like two completely different mindsets of these users.
I actually think it's one of the main reasons the BlackBerry failed, and I think the opportunity that it had to still keep going is linked to what you just said. The BlackBerry had no vision. Like, if you look at these three guys, I was not trying to portray three, like, geniuses who could see the future and knew where things were going. They were like hackers, basically, and like, I read a book at the same time that I was reading this BlackBerry book called Masters of Doom, which is about the early days of a company called ID Software, which invented Wolfenstein and then Doom. And I learned that the lifestyle of video game programmers in the 90s was so degenerate. Like, these are like the people who couldn't get into regular software design, right? And I really loved that lifestyle because it reminded me of what I wanted to be when I was a kid. Like, I wanted to just hang around and play EverQuest and eat pizza all day. And that's all I wanted to do. And I wanted to be with my friends, wasting my life away, and I thought that had some meaning. And as I'm reading this book, I'm like, oh, these video game developers are kind of doing that, but they're making video games at the same time. And I thought, oh, I can marry the culture of a place like ID Software with a hardware company like BlackBerry, and I think it's going to capture something that you don't normally see, which is what a uncool, like by society standards, workplace looks like. Like what a very like male-driven, lazy, pizza eating, like you improvise your desk. Like there's something that I love so much about that because it's really where I came from, and that in many ways is the polar opposite of the culture of a place like Apple. Like Apple has a kind of, well, not only do they have a vision for culture, but they also have like some prestige, and if you go there, it's like, here I am in Cupertino, and I'm a sophisticated, important person. BlackBerry was not that at all. They were like, we're slime. We're just slime making phones. And the problems that they were trying to solve were very immediate, right? Like, how do I get email on a phone? It's like they had perfect vision, but only 6 feet in front of their face, right? Like they could solve problems that were really technical and really immediate, but these people were not visionaries. And the iPhone is the product of a complete visionary who, as you said, has an idea for how we'll all be living our lives. And so I think that is the big difference between these two places.
I want to give away one more.
This next film is a slightly earlier Spike Lee film, Malcolm X. Ah, yes. And I gotta tell you guys, I was looking at the back, They have a lot of features on all of these. At this point in me pulling these Blu-rays out, the lady says, okay, are there any other films that you want to look at? And I went, no. That's it, just these 3. And there was a moment of panic where it was like, oh, it's just these movies. That's all it's going to be, and I really stuck to it. I'll tell you what happens after I give this away. This next trivia question is, I guess it's got to be harder than the last one I just asked. Okay. What? Okay. The character who comes in, I won't use his name because that'll make it too easy. There's a character in the movie named Charles Purdy. This is not the question. He is a legendary Canadian actor who you don't even know what the question's going to be. Okay, who was the pet actor of a very famous director and is famous for one thing in particular in a number of action movies. What is this one thing that this actor is famous for having happened to him? You have to just shout it out. Yeah. Who said losing limbs? Yeah, so Michael Ironside is famous with Paul Verhoeven for having his arms ripped off. He has his arms ripped off in Total Recall, has his arm ripped off in Starship Troopers, and he was going to have his arm ripped off in RoboCop, but as Michael Ironside told me, I couldn't fit in the suit. Paul was going to have me as RoboCop. I was going to be RoboCop. They brought me in, and he said, well, we've already got the suit built, you better fit. I looked at that and I said, there's no way. So Michael Ironside was going to be RoboCop for real. Like showed up on set and the suit didn't fit. And he was going to get his arm ripped off. Like when that 70s show is shotgunning him to death, they were going to have, remember he shoots his arm literally off. That was going to be Ironside's 3rd arm removal by Paul Verhoeven, and it never happened. Anyway, yes, congratulations. Where's my, yeah, great work. Oh, very good. Let's turn this to the audience for a moment. Like, who has some questions that we can quickly get to? Yeah, you over there with the long hair, yeah.
Hi. I just want to say I'm watching the Wii Shop channel clip from Fun Video.
Yes, thank you.
But I just want to say, what are some of your, you come from obviously the early internet, does that lead into the early internet being short film? How did influences from the early internet that you brought?
I love the early internet. This was a question, if you couldn't hear it, when I first got out of film school, I was making a web series version of Nirvana the Band, the show. Yes, some great dark stuff back there, if you can find it. And the question was, did the internet generally, did that culture influence my friends and I? In a major way. I'll say that when I was going through film school, the stuff that I looked up to and I was like, oh my God, I want to be like this, were all people on Newgrounds. I would watch Newgrounds stuff with my friends, specifically this one guy named Alan the Box, who I think might actually have been living around the Chicago area. He's an American, but a lot of that stuff I absorbed and I loved. I mean, I could go through all these references, but a huge influence on me. Mostly because I thought what was so great about the internet is that you could do things that were so specific that it didn't matter if people didn't get it. And that was a philosophy I took into everything I did afterwards. Because when you're making something for a non-mass audience, you don't need to feel like you need to explain everything. And the internet was so great at that, especially at that time. I feel like it's getting not nearly as good. Last really great stuff. I remember when Kyle Mooney was putting out stuff. Did you guys follow him? Yeah. Before he went to SNL, I was like, oh my God, this stuff is incredible. And that was the last time I was really blown away by somebody online. But maybe you guys have some suggestions for things that I've been missing out on. No. We have time for a lot more questions, actually. Yes, you there. Oh yeah, I was at the game today. I watched us destroy, guys. 4-1. We killed them.
How'd you get a hold of this script?
I wrote it.
When I said co-writer at the beginning?
Yeah, I wrote the script. I didn't get the idea. I was asked to option a book, and when I first read the book, I was like, there's no way this is going to be a movie. And then I made this connection to, oh, I can just make this about these three guys almost as though they're young filmmakers. And then I wrote it like that. So it was just, we optioned a book and then wrote the movie off of it with my producer, Matt Miller. Yes, you there.
Hey, how do you feel having like more time behind the camera than like the other movies that you've done?
The question was like, what's it like in all my other work? Like I'm always on camera all the time, and in this one, I didn't have to be on camera so much, so I could direct from behind. I would say in some ways it was way more stressful because when you're on camera, less is asked of you, and your team kind of figures things out because they know they can't talk to you. But that wasn't really the stressor on this project. The thing that was crazy was that I was responsible for the well-being of all the actors who had never worked with us before. And so most of my responsibility was keeping the actors kind of on the same page and making sure everybody was happy. And that is like a very crazy job. And so it wasn't that the split between being on camera and not being on camera was getting my attention. It wasn't distracting me. It was that I was always focused on like the emotional well-being of the rest of the cast. Yes, you who stuck your head up very fast. I think you have a ruler? Yeah.
You mentioned Nirvana and the show Memory is a huge fan of showing his feet. So I was wondering, how has all your previous work influenced you on this project?
How have I been influenced by my own work?
Like, how have you like adapted, like learned from your other work and it helped you with this project?
Well, sure, but not in ways that I could put into words. I wish that, look, I have always felt like I want to make movies that are extremely serious, for lack of a better word. Like I want to make movies that are that are not openly silly, and I want to make television, like I want to make Nirvana the Band the show in like the most ridiculous way possible, so that people who don't know me and don't follow my work and just see one than the other think that there must be, like I must have had an accident between doing one and the other. And I get a lot out of the idea that people could watch Nirvana the Band the show after seeing like maybe The Dirties, or this movie actually as an example, like watching a movie like this, which is quite serious and kind of plain in certain ways, and then watch Nirvana the Band and be like, oh, like I want it to look like, well, I mean, I can only say it as though like I'd been like hit by something. In order to, like, you'd never think the same person would make both. So I'm always trying to do that between these projects. So the lady's like, please pick another movie. And I'm trying to hold my ground, but I realize, oh, if I just leave it at those three titles, like, she's gonna take offense. So I'm like, okay, all right. Since I know I'm giving all these away, and I figured there were gonna be some Nirvana the Band fans here, I got a Melville movie that I saw. It's called Le Samurai, and I saw this film. It's a very cool, very cool movie, but this is the movie that Jay and I saw when we were very young and thought, I should wear a hat like that in our show. And I can't tell you how much of an influence that wound up having on my life. I did not realize I was going to be wearing that stupid hat for a decade when I first watched this film, and it's the same hat. It's so crazy. If I were to lose that, by the way, like that exact hat, we would be so fucked. We've tried to find other like copies of it. Like we've never found another hat that's like that. There's one, and my head has been growing. And so when I put it on now, it's like you can hear it creaking, you know, like an old boat. And I mean, we're shooting a Nirvana the Band movie right now, like literally right now. Thank you. You'll love it. And I just hope the hat makes it. You've seen all of Nirvana the Band?
I've seen some of it.
Oh, I'm surprised you haven't seen some.
No, I know what it is. Yeah.
Oh wait, nobody's answered your question. Okay, this Blackberry question is, what is the official runtime of Blackberry? Okay. Oh wait, that's right. You're all wrong. It's because you know what? It's listed at 2 hours and 1 minute, But that was the cut that we screened in Berlin. And I watched the movie in Berlin and was like, this is too long. And so Kurt took an early flight home, and over the telephone, we re-edited the movie under the nose of our distributors, the other festivals. Like we changed so much. And we got the runtime down to like 1:58, like around there. But nobody, yeah, it's a secret. Okay.
We really have another movie coming in. There's like 200 people out there for a movie.
Let them in, let them in. They can see the tail end of this. Yes, you, sir, at the end with the hat. Yes.
So, you might hear a hot take about this film. It's a film about white guys.
Oh, I love this.
You're a thoughtful guy. Like, you gave away Bamboozled, Menace to Society, and Malcolm X.
Yes.
Think about identity. So, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on the fact that this is a movie about like white engineers.
Sure, if you heard that hot take, what would you say to somebody?
Oh, you know, if I'm in an interview and I'm like with a serious person, then I'd really put on like my adult voice and like say some sophisticated shit. But here I just laugh and laugh. Because I mean, the movies I make are about me, and I'm not thinking about anything else. And I think that in some ways is like all the filmmakers I love are making movies that are so deeply personal to them that to pick them apart and be like, well, why weren't you dealing with this thing that was happening in your culture at this moment in the 50s or in the 30s or whenever? Like, I mean, it may be a failing of mine, but I'm so navel-gazing with my own work that I'm really just trying to analyze myself constantly. And in this particular case, I mean, it really was like the whitest small town in Canada, the whitest university, and these guys are these guys. So I wasn't gonna sort of change their reality. I mean, I fucked with them enough with this movie that I wasn't gonna go ahead and also sort of change the makeup of what they're coming. You'll also notice that there's no women, and that's just the way that it was. Now, one of the cool things, like on this topic, is that the movie stops in 2007, but one of the crazy impacts that Research in Motion did have in my country is that because it was like the biggest game in town, like we're talking about a super company, like it was a company that created so many jobs. It was the biggest employer in not only Waterloo, but like I think it was a top 3 employer in the country, just in this one small town. And because of that, and because it was associated with a university, that university started getting thousands of new young people applying, and a lot of those were women who were like, oh my gosh, I should, because it was a boom time. It was like everybody was pouring in. And so the number of female engineers who came out of this just because of Research in Motion and then started working at Research in Motion, it was like a major cultural shift. And the film like nods to it a little bit when Michael Ironside is like, all you boys with your little dicks, and then this girl is like, wait a minute. Like we try to honor that a bit, but yeah, I mean, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Yo, no, please don't clap. No, why? You're gonna alienate this guy.
I want to thank IFC Films. I want to thank, the film opens next week. It will open at this theater next week. So if you guys like what you saw, please, through whatever means at your disposal, let people know that it's opening, that it's playing here, that you liked it. Matt, thank you so much for coming.
It was such an honor, guys. Thank you so much. I know we really went on for a long time, but I really appreciate your time, and I can't thank you enough for coming.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
If you're
you.
sticking around for the next movie, still got to go outside. So